It started long before I said yes, long before the first message ever appeared on my screen. Maybe it began in the quiet moments, those silent dinners, where the only sound was the clinking of a fork against porcelain. Maybe it began with the way we stopped looking at each other, choosing instead to look at our phones, our work, our empty plates. There was no fight, no betrayal yet, just a slow fading. A slow forgetting of how it felt to be seen. The house had become a place of echoes. His voice was still there, but softer, distant. We spoke in short phrases, the kind you say because they're polite, not because they mean anything. How was your day? Fine. You eat? Yeah. Every night ended the same way, side by side, separated by a screen's glow. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, it had just become normal. Sometimes I'd catch him smiling at something on his phone. I used to ask what was funny. I stopped asking when the answers stopped coming. Instead, I filled my own silence. Podcasts, music, messages from friends that I didn't answer. I was surrounded by noise, but I'd never felt quieter inside. I tried to fix it. I cooked his favorite meals. I wore the dress he once said he liked. He didn't notice, or maybe he did, and chose not to say anything. That hurt more than anger would have. At least anger means someone still cares enough to feel. There were nights I'd sit by the window, listening to the rain slide down the glass, wondering when I'd stopped being his choice and started being his habit. The clock ticked louder those nights, as if reminding me of every second I'd wasted waiting for him to see me again. My wedding ring, the one I once polished every week, had started to feel heavy. I'd take it off while doing dishes and forget to put it back on. Not because I didn't love him, but because I didn't feel loved by him. Love needs attention to survive. Ours was starving. I remember one evening, he came home late, muttered a tired apology, kissed my forehead without looking, and went straight to bed. I stood there in the kitchen, the refrigerator's hum filling the air, my reflection wavering in the microwave's glass door. I looked like someone else. Someone smaller. It wasn't sadness anymore, it was emptiness. A quiet kind of pain that doesn't scream. It just settles inside you, spreading slow and patient, like fog. And then, when someone finally noticed me, when someone asked how I was and waited for the answer, when someone made me laugh again, I didn't say no. I said yes. To everything. It was just a message. Just one. A tiny gray bubble lighting up my screen late one evening while I sat in bed, pretending to read. The notification sound was sharp in the silence, a reminder that someone, somewhere, had thought of me. His name was familiar, an old friend from years ago. Someone who used to make me laugh without even trying. I hesitated before replying, but loneliness has a way of convincing you that some conversations are harmless. We started with small talk. How have you been? Still working at the same place. Simple, safe things. But the thing about simple words is how quickly they can start to mean more when you've been starved of attention. He remembered my favorite movie. He said he missed the way I used to tell stories. It felt strange, being remembered in detail after so long. My husband never forgot birthdays or anniversaries, but somehow, he'd forgotten me. I told myself it was innocent. I told myself I deserved to feel good again. Every laugh we shared through that glowing screen filled a space I'd been trying to ignore for years. He said I sounded happier lately. I said yes, I was. I didn't tell him why. I didn't tell him that his words were the only warmth I felt that week. The conversations grew longer, stretching past midnight. We started sharing secrets, memories, even regrets. I told him about my husband's silence, the walls between us, the nights I spent talking to no one. He listened, really listened, and when he said, "You deserve to be seen," something inside me cracked open. At home, I caught myself smiling at my phone. I began dressing differently, fixing my hair before video calls, putting on lipstick for no reason. I said it was self-care. Maybe it was. Or maybe it was vanity, a flicker of something I'd thought was long gone. My husband noticed once, asked, "What's the occasion?" I just said, "Nothing." And we both knew that was true and not true at the same time. The messages became our ritual. Morning greetings, midday check-ins, goodnight texts. The kind that end with hearts you pretend don't mean anything. I told myself it was all words. Just words. But words have power. They can touch you without ever crossing a room. He started calling me beautiful. I didn't stop him. When he said, "I wish I could see you," I didn't say no. I didn't say anything at all. I just stared at the screen, feeling my pulse match the blinking cursor, waiting for my reply. We were careful. Or maybe we weren't. Maybe we both wanted to be caught, just to see if anyone still cared enough to stop us. And that's how it began, the slow unraveling of everything I thought I could control. The moment I realized that the smallest yes can be louder than a scream. The night it happened didn't feel special. It wasn't planned, not really. It was raining, the kind of steady, soft rain that makes the world feel quieter, smaller, easier to hide in. I told him I was meeting a friend for coffee, a harmless lie that rolled off my tongue too easily. He barely looked up from his laptop when I said it. "Be safe," he murmured. That was all. No suspicion, no question. Just trust, heavy and undeserved. I sat in the car for a long time before driving. The rain hit the windshield like a heartbeat, steady and relentless. I almost turned back twice. But loneliness can sound a lot like courage when you want it to. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from knowing I'd already crossed a line before I'd even started the car. When I saw him waiting at the cafe, it felt like a movie scene, one I didn't belong in. He smiled in that way people do when they're happy to see you, not out of obligation, not out of habit, but out of something real. I hadn't seen that look directed at me in years. We talked for hours, laughing too loudly, pretending not to notice the people staring. The space between us shrank with every minute until it wasn't space anymore, it was tension. Warm, dangerous, magnetic. He touched my hand when I reached for my cup. Just a brush of skin. Nothing dramatic, but it felt like a spark catching fire. My breath hitched. I didn't pull away, neither did he. That was the moment. That quiet, almost invisible moment where everything changed. He asked softly, "Are you sure?" And I said it before I even thought about it. Yes. The hotel room was just across the street, but it might as well have been a different world. The air smelled like rain and perfume. We didn't talk much, there wasn't anything left to say. It wasn't passion, it was escape. It wasn't love, it was hunger for being wanted again. Every kiss was a lie I told myself to feel something. Every heartbeat was a countdown to regret. Afterward, there was silence. Not the comfortable kind, the kind that feels like a verdict. He slept for a while. I didn't. I just stared at the ceiling, tracing the cracks in the plaster, listening to the rain ease into a drizzle. My phone buzzed once, my husband, asking if I'd eaten. I stared at the screen until it went dark again. When I got home, he was asleep on the couch, the TV still playing. I stood there, watching him breathe, feeling something collapse inside me. I could still smell his cologne on my skin. I washed my hands 3 times. It didn't help. I told myself it was just one night. Just a mistake. But deep down, I knew. It wasn't the lie that destroyed me. It was how easy it was to say yes. Morning came quietly, like it always does, pretending nothing had changed. The sunlight crept through the blinds, soft and golden, as if it didn't know what I'd done. He was sitting at the table when I walked in, my husband, sipping his coffee, scrolling through his phone, wearing that same calm expression he always had. For a moment, I wondered if he could see it on me. If guilt had a color, a smell, a weight heavy enough to notice. But he just looked up, smiled faintly, and said, "Morning." I said it back. My voice didn't sound like mine. The days that followed were normal in the most unbearable way. We talked about groceries, bills, plans for the weekend. We laughed at a video online. Everything looked the same, but I couldn't stop hearing that single word echoing in my head, yes. Every time he reached for my hand, I flinched just a little. Every time he said, "I love you," something inside me tightened, like a wound refusing to heal. I thought about confessing. I rehearsed the words in my head 100 times, how I'd say them, how he might look at me, how he might walk away. But every version ended the same, me, alone, and the silence that followed. So, I kept it buried. I told myself that hiding it was mercy. That protecting him from the truth was a kind of love. Maybe that's the lie every unfaithful heart tells itself. He never asked questions. Maybe he didn't need to. Maybe he already knew and chose not to see it. Sometimes, I'd catch him looking at me too long, like he was searching for something. I'd look away first. Nights were the hardest. Lying beside him, listening to his steady breathing, I'd stare into the dark, wondering when the guilt would fade. It didn't. It settled into me, quiet but constant, like a shadow that followed wherever I went. The messages stopped. The affair ended. But the damage stayed, small, invisible cracks spreading through everything I used to be sure of. Months passed. We celebrated an anniversary. He gave me flowers. I smiled for the photo, posted it online, captioned it, "Forever." The irony burned in my throat. Sometimes, when he tells me stories about his day, I drift away. I watch his lips move, hear the words, but my mind is somewhere else, back in that rain-soaked night, in that moment when I stopped being the person I thought I was. I wish I could say I learned something noble from it, that it made me wiser, stronger, better. It didn't. It just made me quieter, more careful with the truth.
He still says he loves me. He says it every morning, sometimes without even thinking about it. And I still say yes, but I don't mean it anymore.